The planet Calith 4 had been dead for 2 million years. Nothing lived on its surface. No plants grew from its soil. No water flowed in its rivers. The world was gray and silent, covered in dust that had not moved since the last wind died countless ages ago. But beneath the surface, there was something. A massive underground chamber stretched deep into the planet's crust. The chamber was so large that it could hold entire cities inside it. And on every wall, on every pillar, on every surface that could be carved, there were tablets. 10,000 tablets made of stone that had somehow survived the death of everything else. Ambassador Torak stood at the entrance of this great chamber. He was a Velith, a species known throughout the galaxy for their intelligence and their skill with languages. His body was tall and thin, covered in blue scales. 4 eyes blinked slowly as he looked at the tablets that surrounded him. 300 years. The Galactic Cooperative had studied this place for 300 years. The greatest minds from 100 different worlds had tried to read these tablets. Every computer, every translation system, every method known to civilized species had been used. And still, no one understood a single mark. Torak turned to face the other representatives gathered behind him. There were 12 different species present today. The Morth were there, their bodies made of living crystal that glowed softly in the darkness. The Soon had come, their forms barely visible, their minds capable of touching thoughts across great distances. Scientists and scholars from worlds across the galaxy stood in this ancient chamber, all of them defeated. "We have failed again," Torak announced. His voice echoed in the vast space. 3 centuries of study, and we understand nothing. Perhaps it is time to accept that these tablets will never reveal their secrets. Elder Ravi of the Morth floated forward. Light passed through her crystal body, creating patterns on the stone floor. Perhaps they were never meant to be read. Perhaps they are simply decoration. Art without meaning. No one believed this. Everyone could feel it. The tablets were arranged too carefully. The marks were too deliberate. Something important had been carved here, something that the creators wanted others to find and understand. But what? The chamber felt heavy with frustration and disappointment. Then a new sound broke the silence. The sound of a ship landing on the surface above. The sound of human footsteps on the stairs leading down. The humans had arrived. Torak watched them enter the chamber. There were only 3 of them, a small team compared to the dozens of alien researchers present. They carried simple equipment, basic tools that looked almost primitive next to the advanced technology the Morth had brought. The first human was a woman named Una Park. She walked with confidence, her eyes moving across the tablets with obvious curiosity. Behind her came a man called Taiho Kim. He was quieter, more thoughtful. His eyes were tired, like someone who had spent too many nights reading old books. The third was a young woman named Jisoo Han, carrying bags of equipment on her shoulders. Torak stepped forward to greet them. Humanity had only joined the Galactic Cooperative 40 years ago. They were newcomers, still learning about the galaxy and its ways. Inviting them to this expedition had been a gesture of politeness, nothing more. No one expected them to contribute anything useful. "Welcome, humans," Torak said. He did not hide the doubt in his voice. "You may observe our work, of course, but I must warn you that greater minds than yours have tried and failed to understand this place." Una smiled at him. It was a patient smile, the kind a teacher might give to a student who thought they knew everything. "We appreciate the opportunity, Ambassador. We are honored to be here." She did not argue with him. She did not try to prove herself. She simply walked past him and began to look at the tablets. Taiho moved more slowly. He stopped at the first tablet he reached and simply stood there, looking at it. He did not use any equipment. He did not take any measurements. He just looked, Jisoo set up a simple recording device and began to document everything. Her equipment made soft sounds in the silence. The alien scientists watched with amusement. The Morath had computers that could analyze 1 billion patterns in a single second. The Suan could touch the memory of stones with their minds. What could humans possibly do with their simple eyes and basic tools? Hours passed. The alien researchers continued their work, using technology that humans could barely understand. Taiho continued to stand before the tablets, moving slowly from one to the next. Yuna walked through the entire chamber, not studying individual tablets but looking at how they were arranged. She noted which ones faced the entrance and which ones faced the walls. She counted how many were placed high and how many were placed low. By the end of the first day, the alien scientists had made no progress. They packed their equipment and prepared to rest. Taiho did not rest. He stayed in the chamber, sitting on the cold stone floor, staring at the marks that covered every surface around him. "What do you see?" Yuna asked him quietly. "Fear," he answered. Whoever made these was afraid. Not just worried. Not just concerned. Truly afraid. The kind of fear that makes you carve warnings into stone so that they will last forever. Yuna sat down beside him. "How can you know that?" Taiho was quiet for a long moment. "On Earth, I spent my life studying dead civilizations. The Egyptians who built tombs for their kings. The Maya who carved calendars into temple walls. The countless small tribes who left paintings in caves that no one would see for thousands of years." He pointed to a section of one tablet. "These marks are deep. Whoever made them pressed hard, cutting into the stone with great force. That is not how you write something casual. That is how you write something urgent. Something that must be remembered." Above them, on the surface of the dead planet, night was falling. The stars came out, the same stars that had shone 2 million years ago when the beings who made these tablets still lived. Somewhere in that darkness, something had killed an entire world. And the last survivors had spent their final days carving messages into stone, hoping that someone someday would understand. Taiho looked at the endless tablets around him. 10,000 messages from the dead. 10,000 warnings that no one could read. "We will understand you," he whispered to the empty chamber. "I promise." The stone did not answer. But somehow, in the silence, it felt like the ancient dead were listening. The archive contained 10,000 illegible tablets. Human looked once and said, "These are our warnings." Part 2. The first glance. 3 days passed in the underground chamber. 3 days of endless study, of machines humming and computers calculating, of alien scientists growing more and more frustrated. The Morath had brought their greatest translation systems. Crystal computers that could process more information in 1 minute than a human brain could handle in a lifetime. They scanned every tablet, measured every scratch, analyzed every tiny detail. Their machines found patterns, but the patterns made no sense. Random noise, the computer said. Meaningless marks. The Suan tried something different. Their species could touch the memories left behind in objects, reading echoes of emotions and thoughts from long ago. 3 of their elders sat before the tablets for an entire day, their minds reaching into the stone, searching for some trace of the beings who had carved these marks. They found nothing. 2 million years was too long. The memories had faded to silence. Ambassador Torak watched the failures pile up. He had spent 50 years of his life studying this archive. 50 years of hope followed by disappointment. Now even the great Suan had given up. What chance was left? He found Taiho Kim sitting alone in a far corner of the chamber. The human had barely slept since arriving. His eyes were red and tired, but he kept looking at the tablets, moving slowly from one to the next. "You are wasting your time," Torak said. There was no anger in his voice, only pity. Our best computers cannot read these marks. Your eyes alone will not succeed where our technology has failed. Taiho did not look away from the tablet in front of him. Your computers look for language, grammar, vocabulary, rules. That connect sounds to meanings. Yes, that is how language works. That is how your languages work. Taiho finally turned to face the ambassador. But what if these are not words at all? Torak's 4 eyes blinked in confusion. If they are not words, then what are they? Instead of answering, Taiho asked a question. Ambassador, when you were young, did your parents teach you that fire was dangerous? Of course. All Velith children learn this. How? Did they give you a lecture? Did they explain the chemistry of burning? Torak thought back to his childhood. No, my mother simply touched my hand near a flame, close enough to feel the heat. I understood immediately that it would hurt me. Taiho smiled. Exactly. Some lessons do not need words. Pain teaches fear. Heat teaches danger. Some knowledge goes directly into the body, into the heart, without passing through language at all. He turned back to the tablet. The beings who made these marks knew that they would be dead long before anyone found them. They knew that whatever species discovered this place would be completely alien, with different bodies, different minds, different ways of thinking. How do you send a message to someone you cannot possibly imagine? Torak was silent. He had never considered this question. You use what is universal, Taiho continued. Not sounds or symbols that might mean different things to different minds. You use shapes, patterns, things that any intelligent creature would recognize. He pointed to a series of marks on the tablet. See these circles? What do circles look like to every species in the galaxy? Stars, Torak said slowly. Planets. Celestial bodies. Yes, some things are the same everywhere. Circles are orbits. Lines are connections. Repeated marks are counting. Taiho traced his finger through the air, following the scratches. These beings were not writing a letter. They were drawing a picture. A picture that anyone from any world could understand. Yuna and Jisoo had been listening from nearby. Now Yuna stepped forward, her eyes bright with understanding. That is why the computers failed. They were looking for grammar, but there is no grammar. Just images. Just meaning without words. Taiho nodded. On Earth, we have cave paintings that are 40,000 years old. Pictures of animals, of hunters, of danger. No one taught us the language of those ancient artists, but we understand their paintings. A picture of a lion is a picture of a lion, whether you are from their time or ours. He stood up and walked to the center of the chamber, where the largest tablets were displayed. These marks are scratches, yes, but look at them differently. Do not try to read them. Try to feel them. The alien scientists had gathered now, drawn by the conversation. They watched as Taiho approached the central tablet, a massive stone covered in thousands of marks. Look here, he said, pointing to one section. These scratches are deep. Very deep, made with great force. Whoever carved them was pressing hard, putting their whole body into the work. He moved to another section. But here, the marks are shallow, light, hesitant, like someone who is not sure what to write. Different emotional states, Jisoo said, understanding. Different levels of urgency. Yes, Taiho's voice grew quiet. And look at the arrangement. The deepest marks, the most forceful ones, are all near these symbols. He pointed to a pattern that appeared again and again. Circles with lines through them. Whatever this means, it was important. It was urgent. It was the thing they most needed us to understand. Ambassador Torak moved closer, looking at the marks with new eyes. But what does it mean? Even if we accept that these are pictures, We do not know what the pictures represent. Taiho was quiet for a moment. Then he pointed to a sequence of marks that repeated across dozens of tablets. Circles followed by lines, followed by more circles, each time with one fewer circle than before. A countdown, he said softly. They were counting down to something. The chamber fell silent. Every species present understood counting. Every civilization measured time. And every intelligent being knew what it meant when numbers went down instead of up. Counting down to what? Elder Ravi asked. Taiho looked at the countless tablets around them. 10,000 stones, carved by hands that had turned to dust 2 million years ago. 10,000 messages left by beings who knew they were going to die. Something was coming, he said. Something so terrible that they spent their final days warning whoever came after them. They could not save themselves, but maybe, they thought, they could save someone else. He turned to face the gathered aliens and humans. These are not decorations. These are not art. These are warnings. And we need to understand them before it is too late. Outside, above the dead world, the stars turned slowly in the endless dark. Somewhere out there, something waited. Something that had killed this world 2 million years ago. And somewhere in these 10,000 tablets was the key to understanding what it was. Taiho sat back down and continued to look at the marks. The work had only just begun. The archive contained 10,000 illegible tablets. Human looked once and said, "These are our warnings." Part 3. The warnings we knew 2 weeks past. The underground chamber became a place of constant activity. The alien scientists had stopped using their translation computers. Instead, they watched the humans work, learning a new way to see. Taiho led the effort. He walked through the chamber like a man reading a book, stopping at each tablet, studying each mark, building a picture in his mind. Yuna organized the findings, creating maps that showed how the tablets connected to each other. Jisoo photographed everything, creating a record that would survive even if the tablets themselves crumbled to dust. Slowly, the picture became clear that the beings who built this archive called themselves something that could not be pronounced. But in their universal language of shapes and patterns, they had drawn themselves. Tall creatures with many limbs, eyes that faced forward, hands that could build and create. They had been a peaceful species, living on a world of beauty and plenty. Then something came. Taiho gathered everyone in the central chamber. Hundreds of researchers from dozens of species sat or stood or floated before him, waiting to hear what he had learned. The beings of this world lived here for over 100,000 years, he began. They built cities. They created art. They loved and fought and wondered about the stars, just like all of us do. And then, about 2 million years ago, everything changed. He pointed to a section of tablets near the eastern wall. These are the oldest marks in the chamber. You can tell because the stone has worn differently over time. These tablets tell the story of normal life. Seasons changing. Children being born. Leaders rising and falling. Ordinary things. He walked to the western wall, where the tablets were better preserved. But here, the marks change. See how the scratches become deeper? Harder? More urgent? Something happened that made them afraid. Yuna stepped forward with a portable display. On it, she showed images she had collected from tablets throughout the chamber. We found these symbols repeated over and over again. Thousands of times. The symbols were simple. A circle, representing a star or planet. Lines extending from the circle like rays of light. And then, covering the circle, a dark shape. Something that blocked the light. Something that swallowed the brightness. They saw something coming, Yuna explained. From the darkness between the stars. Something that moved slowly, taking centuries to cross the great distances of space. But it was coming, and they knew it. Ambassador Torak raised one of his 4 hands. What was this thing? Did they describe it? Taiho nodded slowly. They tried. But how do you describe something that is beyond description? They used different images on different tablets. Sometimes it was a shadow that ate light. Sometimes it was a mouth that swallowed worlds. Sometimes it was simply emptiness, a place where nothing existed anymore. He pointed to a large tablet in the center of the chamber. But one thing was always the same. This symbol. The symbol was a circle, broken, not complete, shattered. We thought at first that this was their name for the creature, Taiho said. But we were wrong. This symbol does not mean the creature. It means what happens after the creature arrives. He paused, letting the silence build. Cycle. The symbol means cycle. The creature comes again and again, moving through the galaxy in a great circle that takes millions of years to complete. It destroys everything in its path, and then it moves on, and then, eventually, it returns. The chamber was completely quiet. Every species understood what this meant. It was not a single disaster that had killed this world. It was a pattern, a repeating nightmare that had been happening since before any of their civilizations existed. Elder Ravi of the Morath spoke, her crystal body flickering with worried light. You said they counted down. Counted down to when? This was the moment Taiho had been dreading. He had done the calculations 100 times, hoping each time that he had made a mistake. But the numbers were always the same. The beings of this world were excellent astronomers, he said quietly. They tracked the movement of stars. They measured the positions of distant objects. And they calculated when the cycle would bring the creature back to this part of the galaxy. He pulled up his own display. Numbers and star charts filled the air. They calculated that the cycle would bring the creature here approximately 2 million years after their own deaths. They could not be exact. Over such vast distances of time, small errors become large ones. But they gave us a range. What is the range? Torak asked. His voice was barely a whisper. Taiho looked at the ambassador. The range began about 100 years ago, and it ends about 200 years from now. The meaning hit the gathered species like a physical blow. The creature was not ancient history. It was not a distant threat. It was here, now, somewhere in the galaxy. Or it would be soon. There is more, Yuna said. She did not want to say it, but the truth had to be spoken. The tablets describe how the creature finds its prey. It does not simply wander. It listens. It waits for signals from young civilizations. Radio waves. Light beams. Any sign of intelligent life. Torak understood immediately. Humanity. 40 years ago. When you discovered faster than light travel and joined the galactic community. Yuna nodded. When we started broadcasting our presence to the stars. The tablets contain mathematical formulas describing the speed at which signals travel and the direction from which the creature approaches. Based on our calculations, the timing matches almost exactly. Taiho looked at the tablets around him. 10,000 warnings, carved in stone by beings who knew they were going to die. They had spent their last days not trying to save themselves, but trying to save whoever came after them. They knew they could not survive, he said. But they hoped we could. They gave us everything they learned about the creature. Its patterns. Its behavior. Its weaknesses. He looked at the gathered species. Velith and Morath and Suin and human, all together in this tomb of ancient knowledge. They gave us a chance. Now we have to decide what to do with it. The archive contained 10,000 illegible tablets. Human looked once and said, "These are all warnings." Part 4. The human response to news spread across the galaxy like fire. Within days, every world in the Galactic Cooperative knew about the tablets and their terrible warning. Within weeks, panic had taken hold. Ships launched from 1,000 planets, carrying families fleeing toward the edges of known space. Governments called emergency meetings. Military fleets were mobilized, though no one knew what they could possibly fight against. The Velith demanded evacuation routes. Their leaders argued for days about which direction offered the best chance of escape. The Morith began building underground shelters, hoping that if they hid deep enough, the creature might pass them by. The Suan entered a state of deep meditation, preparing their minds for what might be the end of all things. Fear ruled the galaxy. On Keleth 4, the research team watched the chaos unfold through news reports and messages from home. Ambassador Torak received orders from his government demanding immediate answers. The Morith elders wanted to know if escape was possible. Everyone wanted solutions, and no one had any, except the humans. On the 5th day after the announcement, Una called a meeting. The underground chamber had become their headquarters now. The ancient tablets watching silently as the living tried to avoid the fate of the dead. Representatives from every species in the Phaneos cooperative attended through holographic projection. Their faces showed fear, anger, desperation. They looked to Una with demanding eyes. She surprised them all by smiling. "I understand your fear," she said. "Truly, I do. But I need you to understand something about humanity. Something about who we are and where we come from." The gathered representatives waited, confused by her calmness. "On Earth, our world, we have faced extinction many times. Long before we developed technology, ice ages nearly froze us out of existence. We survived because we learned to build shelters and make fire. Later, diseases killed vast portions of our population. We survived because we learned medicine and cooperation. And just a few centuries ago, we invented weapons powerful enough to destroy our entire planet." She paused, letting the weight of that statement settle. "We built weapons that could kill every living thing on Earth, and we pointed them at each other. For decades, the destruction of our world was one bad decision away. But we did not destroy ourselves. We found ways to step back from the edge. We survived." Torak leaned forward. "But this is different. This is not a weapon you can choose not to use. This is something beyond your control. Beyond anyone's control." Taiho stepped forward to stand beside Una. His tired eyes had a new light in them now. "You are right that we cannot control this creature," he said. "But the beings who made these tablets knew that too. They spent their last days preparing for someone like us to find this place. And they did not just leave warnings." He gestured to Jisoo, who brought up images of tablets from the deepest part of the archive. These were the tablets hidden at the very center, protected by walls of other stones. These tablets are different from the others. The outer tablets tell the story of what happened. They describe the creature and its cycle. But these inner tablets, these are instructions. The representatives leaned closer to their displays. The beings of this world had time before the creature reached them. Not enough time to escape, but enough time to study. They watched the creature destroy other worlds. They observed its patterns. They learned its methods. Taiho pointed to a complex pattern of marks. The creature does not simply destroy. It consumes. It feeds on something, though the tablets do not say exactly what. Energy, perhaps. Or information. Or something we do not have a name for. And they found a weakness? Elder Ravi asked hopefully. "Not exactly a weakness," Una said, "but a pattern. The creature does not attack randomly. It moves towards signals. It follows the traces of communication. But more importantly, it targets civilizations that are alone." She pulled up a star chart showing the positions of destroyed worlds that the tablets described. "Look at this pattern. Every world that was destroyed was isolated, far from its neighbors. not communicating with other species. The creature picks off the lonely, the separated, the ones who have no allies. Taiho continued. But when civilizations were connected, when they shared information and resources and support, the creature had difficulty. Not because connection made them stronger in battle, but because connection made them unpredictable. The creature expects patterns. It expects isolated prey that behaves in simple ways. You are saying, Tarek said slowly, that our best defense is cooperation? Yuna nodded. The beings of this world left these tablets as an invitation. They knew they would die, but they hoped that whoever found their warnings would pass those warnings on, and whoever received those warnings would pass them on again. A chain of knowledge stretching across millions of years and countless species. A chain that the creature cannot break, Taiho added, because it exists in the connections between civilizations, not in any single world. The representatives were silent, thinking about this new possibility. On Earth, Yuna said, we have a saying. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. We have survived everything that tried to destroy us because we learned to work together. Not just human with human, but human with every other species we have ever met. She looked at each representative in turn. The Velith have the greatest minds for language. The Morith have computing power beyond imagination. The Suan can sense things no one else can perceive. Humanity, we are good at one thing above all else. We are good at refusing to give up. Taiho smiled slightly. When we saw these tablets, we did not see meaningless scratches. We saw a message from beings who wanted to help us survive. We saw hope written in stone. Yuna spread her hands, including everyone in her gesture. The beings of this world could not save themselves, but they tried to save us. Now we have a choice. We can run and hide and wait for the creature to find us one by one. Or we can do what they asked. We can build the chain. We can connect. We can become something the creature has never faced before. She stood tall in the ancient chamber, surrounded by the warnings of the dead. We can face this together. And together, we might just survive. The archive contained 10,000 illegible tablets. Human looked once and said, "These are our warnings. Part 5. The Chain Unbroken One." A year had passed since the discovery that changed everything. The galaxy was different now. Not because the danger had gone away, but because the response to that danger had transformed the way civilizations thought about each other. Fear had given way to purpose. Panic had become preparation. On Kelith 4, the underground chamber had become the most important place in known space. What had once been a tomb of forgotten knowledge was now a living center of cooperation. Ships arrived every day, bringing researchers from hundreds of worlds. The ancient tablets were no longer mysteries to be solved. They were teachers, guiding the living toward survival. Taiho stood on a platform overlooking the main chamber. Below him, teams of mixed species worked side by side. A Velith linguist sat next to a human student, both studying the same tablet. Morath computers processed data while Suan observers checked the emotional content of their findings. The division between alien and human had blurred until it barely existed. Yuna joined him on the platform, holding a cup of coffee that had become her constant companion during the long nights of work. "The first beacons launched this morning," she said. Taiho nodded. He had watched the ceremony through a display. 12 ships had departed from 12 different worlds, each carrying a beacon designed by the combined efforts of every species in the cooperative. The beacons were simple things, made of metal and stone. Nothing electronic that might fail over time. Each one carried messages carved in the same universal language that the beings of Kelith 4 had created. Pictures and patterns that any intelligent creature could understand. Warnings about the creature. Instructions for survival. And most importantly, an invitation to join the chain. "Where will they go?" Taiho asked. "Everywhere. The edges of known space. The dark regions between stars. Anywhere that might someday be home to new civilizations." Yuna took a sip of her coffee. "We calculated that even if most of the beacons are destroyed or lost, at least some will survive. The message will spread." Below them, Jisoo was leading a group of young researchers through a section of newly translated tablets. Her voice carried up to where Taiho and Yuna stood. "These marks describe something the ancient beings called the last gift," Jisoo explained. "They knew they were going to die. They knew they could not stop the creature. But they also knew that knowledge survives. Ideas survive. If they could just get their warning out, if someone could just understand, then their deaths would not be meaningless." A young Morath student raised a crystal in hand. "But why stone? Why not use more advanced technology? Something that would be easier to read?" Jisoo smiled. "Because technology changes. Languages change. Civilizations rise and fall and are replaced by new ones. But certain things remain constant. The shape of stars, the patterns of mathematics, the fear of death and the hope for survival. They chose to write in the language of basic truth because basic truth never becomes obsolete." Taiho felt a warmth in his chest as he listened. 1 year ago, he had been a quiet scholar, studying dead languages on a small planet at the edge of human space. Now he was part of something vast, something that stretched across millions of years and countless worlds. Ambassador Torak approached the platform. The Veleth looked different now than he had a year ago. The doubt and condescension were gone, replaced by something that looked like genuine respect. "The Council has reached a decision," Torak announced. "The cooperative will be restructured. No more isolation. No more worlds working alone. We will create permanent links between all member species. Communication networks that cannot be cut. Alliance bonds that cannot be broken." Yuna nodded. "The chain grows stronger. Because of you," Torak said. He looked at both humans. "We studied these tablets for 300 years. We had the greatest technology in the galaxy. And we understood nothing. You arrived with simple tools and tired eyes, and you saw what we could not." Taiho shook his head. "We did not see anything special. We just recognized something familiar. On Earth, our ancestors left warnings for us in caves and on stone tablets, just like the beings of this world. We learned to read those warnings because our survival depended on it. This was just the same skill, applied to a larger problem." Torak considered this. "Perhaps that is what makes humans different. You have been leaving messages for your future selves since you first learned to think. You have practice at this kind of hope." That evening, the entire research team gathered in the central chamber for a ceremony. Representatives from every species formed a circle around the largest tablet, the one that bore the symbol of the broken cycle. Jisoo carried a new stone to the circle. It was smooth and pale, quarried from a moon that orbited a Morith world. In her hands, she held carving tools of ancient design. As everyone watched, she began to carve. The marks she made were in the same universal language as the ancient tablets. Circles for stars, lines for connections, patterns for meaning. But the message was new. She carved a symbol for each species in the cooperative. Veleth and Morith and Suan and Human and 100 others. She arranged them in a circle, each one connected to all the others by thin lines that represented the bonds between them. In the center of the circle, she carved a new symbol. Not a broken cycle, but a complete one. Unbroken. Hold down and beneath it, she carved words in the universal language. Pictures that meant something simple and profound. We heard you. We are here. We are not alone. When she finished, the chamber was silent. Then, slowly, a sound began. The Veleth started first, a low humming that was their version of applause. The Morath joined in, their crystal bodies ringing like bells. The Suan added their mental presence, a wave of warmth and approval that touched every mind present, and the humans clapped. Simple and primitive compared to the others, but just as heartfelt. Taiho looked around at the chamber full of species, all united by the warning of beings dead for 2 million years. The ancient makers of the tablets had hoped for this. They had dreamed of it in their final days, as the darkness crept closer. They had carved their warnings in stone because they believed that someone, someday, would understand. And they had been right. The creature was still out there, somewhere in the dark between the stars. It would come, eventually. The cycle would continue, but when it arrived, it would find something unexpected. Not scattered civilizations, isolated and afraid. Not lonely worlds, easy prey for a patient hunter. God, it would find a chain. Unbroken, united, stretching across the galaxy. Across time, across the barrier between the dead and the living. It would find hope. Carved in stone and carried to the stars, and it would find that the warnings of the ancient dead had been heard. Taiho walked to the new tablet and placed his hand on the smooth stone, still warm from Jisu's carving. 2 million years of silence finally answered. "We will remember you," he whispered to the long-dead beings who had made this possible. "And we will survive." Above the dead world, the stars continued their endless turning. And among those stars, the beacons began their long journeys, carrying the message forward, keeping the chain alive. The cycle continued, but this time, it would not end in darkness.